Welcome to Murder Mile, a true crime podcast, an audio-guided walk featuring many of London's untold, unsolved and long-forgotten murders, all set within and beyond the West End. Whether in the grip of a drug-induced psychosis, a psychopathic fantasy or paranoid schizophrenia, Daniel Gonzales had left 2 injured and 4 dead in his 2-day killing spree. But with a kill list of at least 10, the next life he would take would be his last. Murder Mile is researched using authentic sources. It contains moments of satire, shock and grisly details, and as a dramatization of the real events, it may also feature loud and realistic sounds, so that no matter where you listen to this podcast, you'll feel like you're actually there. My name is Michael, I am your tour guide, and this is Murder Mile. Episode 138, Daniel Gonzales, The Lost Boy, Part 4. Today, I'm standing on Lamb's Conduit Street in Holborn, WC1. 3.5 miles south of the double murder of Derek and Jean Robinson, 1 mile northwest of Daniel's criminal trial at the Old Bailey, 1 mile northeast of his arrest at the Tottenham Court Road Tube, and 34 miles north of his incarceration at Broadmoor Psychiatric Prison. Coming imminently to Murder Mile. Situated off Theobald's Road, at 10 Lamb's Conduit Street, currently sits the Holborn Police Station. Built in the 1960s, it's an ugly monstrous block of reinforced concrete with flat dark windows and an imposing 15-storey office block above. Fitted with custody suites, a vehicle bay, a firing range and a canteen. Sadly, for one of Murder Mile's much lauded and recently promoted temporary police sergeants, it doesn't have a bar.
What do you mean you don't serve Guinness? Well, what else am I meant to have for breakfast?
In 2013, when London had 136 police stations, owing to repeated government cutbacks, as well as the loss of backroom staff and officers on the beat, now there is barely one police station for each of the city's 32 boroughs, with many buildings closed to the public, including this one. So should you wish to report a crime, here you'll find a locked door, an empty office, and a sign redirecting you elsewhere. Before its demise, many murderers were interrogated by detectives at Holborn. As is standard police procedure, their details were recorded, questions were asked, and responses taped as part of an ongoing investigation. Every suspect had the right to say no comment, but one man did not. But this was not a confession of remorse, but a chance to brag about his crimes, which directly led to his conviction. As it was here, on the afternoon of Friday the 17th of September 2004, that Daniel Gonzales confessed to 4 murders. But who did the talking? His ego or his illness?
I'll be famous. Like those kids who did the shooting at Columbine, man. Mine's a big fucking story. Yeah, I'm gonna be front page news.
Desperate for fame, Daniel's murders were the perfect combination of sickening and salacious for the tawdry tabloids. As with tales of blood, knives, a Jason mask, and callous sound bites of how he sliced up his petrified prey, they cemented his infamy with a catchy nickname, the Freddy Krueger Killer. Only his crimes went mostly unknown. as with Hurricane Francis ripping through the Caribbean, 2 earthquakes unleashing a double tsunami in Japan, and the hunt for the Iraqi fugitive Saddam Hussein, as well as the recent arrest of the Camden Ripper and the investigation into Harold Shipman, one of the world's most prolific serial killers. His timing was terrible. In comparison, Daniel was small fry, the press didn't care, and the British public were focused on the X Factor final. That morning, forensics teams were at 3 different locations across London. The murder of Kevin Malloy in Tottenham, the attempted murder of Kumas Costantino in Hornsey, and the brutal double murder of Derek and Jean Robinson in Highgate. But as yet, they were unaware of Peter King and Marie Harding. Having issued a description of this unnamed assailant, Daniel was being hunted by the police. Only by then, he was already in Soho. Friday the 17th of September 2004 at 12:10 p.m. Later discovered in his bag at the left luggage kiosk at King's Cross Station. In a handwritten note, Daniel had declared,
"I will be a serial killer. I'm going to make sure I get to London and kill as many old Bill as soon as I can."
At 12:11 p.m, he entered exit 1 at the Tottenham Court Road tube station. Being lunchtime, it was quiet, and being casually dressed, he blended in. Except that in his jacket, he had an 8 and a 12-inch kitchen knife. And although this spree killer had already murdered 4, any more would be a bonus. At 12:13 p.m, at the ticket office, he purchased a travel card which would give him a day's travel across the London network. Only it wouldn't get him home. So where he was going, we don't know. And having been unable to take a shower, he paid using a £20 note, which, just like his hands and his clothes, was stained with blood. If he had used a ticket machine, he'd have gone undetected. But he didn't. At 12:14 p.m, as Daniel walked through the turnstile and headed towards the Northern Line, staff spotted a bite mark on his neck, a wound to his leg and his arm, and informed the British Transport Police. At 12:16 p.m, Daniel stood on platform 4 of the southbound Northern Line, waiting for the next tube. Maybe to a major transport hub like Waterloo or Clapham Junction, to tourist spots like the South Bank or Leicester Square, or simply to furnish this blood-hungry spree killer with a carriage full of captive victims trapped inside a train whose doors lock the passengers in once it's in transit. The time was 12:17 p.m. With his heart pounding, 2 knives in his jacket, and 4 sinister voices in his head, with people on the platform, at least 1 more life to take, and 2 police officers approaching from behind. There he stood. He was silent. And then he stopped. Quietly and without any fuss, Daniel gave up. He was searched, handcuffed, and with no need to call for backup, the 2 officers calmly escorted him to the concourse, where Daniel was arrested. But why did his killing spree stop? Was he bored? Were the voices silent? Were 4 victims enough? Was he too desperate to share his sordid tale with the world? Or as a fan of horror movies like Friday the 13th, Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, Is it significant that Platform 4 is where lycanthrope David Kessler slaughtered a London commuter in the film An American Werewolf in London? Or is this just a coincidence? At roughly 12:45 p.m, Daniel was processed at Holborn Police Station, held in a custody suite, and later interviewed, initially in connection with the attack on Kumis, but later he would confess to others. And although he would plead to the lesser offence of manslaughter by diminished responsibility, it was during these interviews, in which he bragged, he laughed, and he recounted the killings with a joyous sense of sadistic relish, that Daniel's own words would ultimately be used to convict him of murder.
I wanted to be Freddy Krueger for the day, kill as many people as possible. I slit her throat. I had to carve him up. I felt clean, orgasmic. I lived bloodbath, killing.
And once his diary was read out aloud in court, it would be impossible for a jury to sympathise with this boy's plight as a paranoid schizophrenic.
I got that old bitch proper. Bloodbath. Pouring out of her throat, boy. I gotta say this. It felt really, really, really good. One of the best things I've done in my life.
Upon his arrest, police headed to his home in Nap Hill. Hearing the news, his mother Leslie was clearly distraught that her worst fear,
does Daniel have to murder or be murdered before he can...
words she had repeated again and again and again, had come true. But across the next few hours, she patiently sat and furnished the police with a full history of Daniel. She told them everything, from the drugs to the crimes to the voices and his psychotic episode just a few days before. And even after everything she had endured over the last 2 decades, with grace and dignity, she expressed remorse for the victims and their families. And yet it seemed that remorse was something her son could only achieve when it suited his need. But was this lack of compassion down to Daniel's ego or his illness? On Wednesday the 22nd of September 2004, Daniel appeared at Highbury Magistrates Court, charged with the murders of Derek and Jean Robinson. He gave his name, his address, and the police were authorised to hold him for a further 3 days, pending their investigation. He was described as unresponsive and vacant. On Thursday the 23rd of September, Daniel was returned to Highbury Magistrates Court to be charged with the following additional offences: burglary, grievous bodily harm, and the attempted murder of Kumis Constantino, the attempted murder of Peter King, and the murders of Kevin Malloy and Marie Harding. But being described as highly emotional and badly behaved, like a little boy wrapped up in his own self-pity, Daniel refused to attend. So the judge, Mrs. Dorothy Quick, transferred the hearing to his cell in the court's basements. With 4 security standing guard, the prosecution and the defence by the door, and the judge in his cell, Daniel was asked to give his name, age and address, but he refused. Instead, he lay motionless on the floor, his legs stiff and rigid, his head fixed at an odd angle, and his vacant eyes glaring into the emptiness. As for the first time in almost a week, he said nothing. But was Daniel mentally unwell, or simply playing the insanity card? While awaiting trial, Daniel was remanded at HMP Belmarsh, a Category A prison full of murderers, rapists and terrorists. If infamy was his goal, he should have relished his bad boy status in a sea of like-minded sadists. Only quickly, it became abundantly clear that Daniel needed psychiatric help. There was a dramatic shift in his mental state. He was aggressive, lunging at prison staff, so much so that they needed a 6-man unlock. 6 prison officers, sometimes in riot gear, just to enter his cell. On the 15th of October 2004, after 3 weeks of Belmarsh, Daniel was moved to Broadmoor, a maximum security psychiatric hospital at Crowthorne in Berkshire. For a boy who dreamed of being a serial killer, surely, in his own twisted way, his incarceration at this infamous institution for the criminally insane, where the deranged legends he had only ever read about, like Peter Sutcliffe, John Strafen, Robert Napper, Kenneth Erskine, David Copeland, Robert Maudsley, and Anthony Hardy, could now become his equals. Surely this would have been Daniel's crowning glory. But it wasn't. Upon admission to Broadmoor, Dr. Das, the forensic consultant psychiatrist, would later state, he needed continuous seclusion and observation around the clock. He was withdrawn, unpredictable, and violent. We really couldn't understand the psychopathology of what was going on underneath. Across his hospitalization, Daniel was moved to the Luton ward, to the ISIS ward, and to the Henley wards at Broadmoor, as each had their own specialization to cater for his ever-changing illness. And yet, each ward's psychiatrist had a very clear consensus that Daniel was suffering from a psychotic illness. Initially, whether it was schizophrenia was uncertain, as when Daniel was treated with antipsychotic medications, he didn't react well. It brought down the agitation and he became quite placid. But we saw a man who had extraparamedial symptoms, such as tremors, muscle spasms, and full body rigidity. Sometimes he was as stiff as a board. Which is why originally Daniel had chosen to self-medicate with street drugs. Dr. Das would later state, he was on the highest level of observation, which required him to be at arm's length of at least 2 members of staff 24 hours a day for the first 18 months. A measure which even Dr. Edward Petch, consultant psychiatrist, would admit was very, very unusual. Within Broadmoor, I have never seen anything like it. But for Daniel's safety and well-being, it was essential. This was the level of care that Daniel and his mother had spent years pleading for. To have proper care, you need a doctor to follow your path and to cross-examine you thoroughly. If I was seeing someone 2 or 3 times a week, at least that's something. And now, he finally had it. During his hospitalization, Daniel was required to attend his trial at the Old Bailey. And although it was his own words which would ultimately convict him, what the jury saw before them was a psychopath. But what the doctors saw was a boy in distress. Having given his testimony in court, Daniel was returned to his cell at Broadmoor and was kept under 24-hour arm's-length observation. Given his emotional state and his threats to kill someone or himself. But even with the best care, in the best facility, there will always be lapses in concentration. Dr. Das would state, I have never encountered that level of self-harm before. As Daniel was lying in bed, silent and still. Under the cover of his bedsheet, he sunk his teeth deep into his cubital fossa, the fleshy depression of his elbow's pit, severing the muscles and rupturing an artery. He lost several litres of blood and was lucky to survive. But even after this, he would still exclaim, "I want to die." Dr. Petch, the admitting psychiatrist, later said, "I have never seen anyone bite himself with that ferocity." In the space of a year, that was the third time that Daniel had tried to take his own life. And so severe was his psychopathy that once again he was moved to a specialist care unit at Broadmoor. But if this suicide attempt was just a ploy to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, was his life worth taking the risk? By September 2005, 1 year into his hospitalization, although his mood still swung wildly from elation to depression, he lashed out, harmed himself, and still heard voices, with his account of the murders ranging from self-pity to uncontrollable grief. Doctors described Daniel as a changed man, thanks to high doses of antipsychotic and mood-stabling medications used to treat schizophrenia. Leslie would state, "This is the best he has ever been. We've not seen Danny so well since he was 15. But the jurors wouldn't see any of this. On Tuesday the 28th of February 2006, the trial began at the Old Bailey before Judge Anne Goddard QC. The evidence that Daniel had committed these murders was irrefutable. But what divided opinion was his motive. Was he bad or mad? For the defense, Dr. Edward Petch agreed that Daniel's illness was atypical and the lack of acute episodes made diagnosis difficult. But that, in his expert opinion, Daniel exhibited a degree of disturbance which was without parallel in my experience. Arguing that he was a paranoid schizophrenic, that he should be found guilty of manslaughter owing to diminished responsibility and treated accordingly. Stating that he is one of the sickest patients I have ever seen. As for the prosecution, with a wealth of compelling evidence on their side, including the knives, the mask, the victims, the diary, and Daniel's own words, as well as conflicting medical testimony from Dr. Philip Joseph, a psychiatrist who said it wasn't schizophrenia but an antisocial personality disorder, the prosecution put forward that Daniel was a psychopath, hell-bent on a mission to commit murder. On Thursday the 16th of March 2006, after a 3-week trial, the jury retired. But after just 90 minutes, they returned with a unanimous verdict. Daniel Gonzales was found guilty of murder. They believed that drugs played a key part, that the voices in his head were fabricated, that he was not suffering from a mental illness, and that he had killed in cold blood. Sentenced on Friday the 17th of March, the relatives of the victims hugged each other. As for the murders of Marie Harding, Kevin Malloy, and Derek and Jean Robinson, and the attempted murders of Peter King and Kumas Constantino, Daniel was given a whole life tariff, meaning he would never be released. Once again, Leslie and Daniel had been let down by a chronically underfunded mental health system, incapable of providing joined-up care over any period of time. But this sentence had one shining light, as although the jury didn't believe that Daniel was mentally ill, the judge would rule that until he was deemed fit, that he should spend the remainder of his sentence at Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital. Over the next few months, although Daniel was still considered as one of the most dangerous patients at Broadmoor, he continued to improve. He stopped self-harming, and he moved to a lower-risk young persons unit called the Windsor Ward. His mother would say, "He is so much better," but he has begun to wonder about what he did and where he is, and he has got depressed. Sometimes he says, "I'm so sorry, Mum. I'm in here." With his appeal rejected and no chance of parole, Daniel's future looked hopeless. But as Dr. Petch would later state, he had killed 4 people, but we always felt there was one left, and that was himself. On Thursday the 9th of August 2007, just before 8 a.m, as part of hospital protocol to observe any patients who were deemed to be a suicide risk, a nurse saw Daniel lying on his bed. She had no real fears, as over the previous week he seemed happy and settled. At a little after 8:20 a.m, the nurse grew concerned as he had not collected his medication. Returning to his room, she found the walls spattered and his bed saturated with blood. Using the shattered edge of a CD case, Daniel had slashed both wrists deep. He could not be revived, and he was pronounced dead. At the inquest into his death, a consultant reiterated that Danny was one of the most disturbed and sick young men that has been treated at Broadmoor Hospital for years, and that the crimes he had committed and the sentence he had received had caused him great anxiety, hence his suicide. In March 2009, an independent review into his care by NHS South West concluded that Daniel had suffered from schizophrenia and that he was not treated successfully, but deemed to be a case of missed opportunities, where lessons could be learned. No person or organisation was held accountable. Whichever way you look at it, Daniel Gonzales was a lost boy. To the jury, he was lost in a life of drugs and horror movies. To the tabloids, he was lost in a deluded fantasy of killing and blood. To his mother, he was lost in a system which was supposed to protect him. But to Daniel, he was just a little boy, lost inside his own mind. A prison he could never escape from, and where no one would hear him scream. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to Murder Mile. That was the final part of Daniel Gonzales, the Lost Boy. Next week, a regular episode. As always, if you enjoyed that episode, there's some non-essential extra stuff after the break. A big thank you to my new Patreon supporters, who are Kaylee Dodd and Lizzie D. Plus a thank you to Amanda Sims for your very kind donation via the Murder Mile donate button in the eShop. I thank you all. I pray that a truckload of Mr. Kipling cakes is accidentally delivered to your homes, alongside a large tanker of freshly brewed but always hot tea. Yummy. Plus a thank you to everyone who leaves lovely 5-star reviews, as us little podcasts can't survive without them. Murder Mile was researched, written and performed by myself, with the main musical themes written and performed by Eric Stein and John Books of Cult With No Name. Thank you for listening, and sleep well. Ooh, ow, ow, ow. Oh, just having a stretch. Try not to stretch too much because last time I pulled a muscle in my leg. Oh, that really hurt. Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to Extra Mile. Oh, it's an early one this morning. I would have done an afternoon record, which are fine. I'm getting used to those now. They're all right. But I've got a busy day today. Got a lot to do. So I did an early morning one to get it done. Oh, busy. Let's go and pop on a quaffy. A quaffy. Hang on a mo. Oh, there we go. Water on. Oh, I'm going to make myself... I ran out of coffee too early. And you shouldn't do that in the morning. Halfway through working. And all my coffee ran out. My brain wasn't working. And I was all over the shop. And I had to rely on water. And you need that zhuzh, don't you? You need the zhuzh. All I kept thinking about was a nice Costa coffee. Which, according to Food Unwrapped, that program I was watching the other day, Costa coffee is like almost 3 to 4 times the amount of caffeine in it as most other coffees. Whoa, brilliant. That's what you need in life. A good old pick-me-up. Right, coming back. Water's on. Oh, lordy. Yeah. Oh, what have we got? Cake time. Oh yeah. Welcome to Extra Mile, everyone. If you're new to Extra Mile, this is non-essential. This is just bit of chat, bit of a quiz, some extra details about the case. But it's not essential. If you're not a fan of waffly stuff, switch off now. Not a problem at all. I'm about to tuck into I got a final Kit Kat orange, 104 calories. Not bad. A Kit Kat orange. And cake of the day from Morrison's is Congress tart. What does it say? It says sweet pastry tarts filled with raspberry jam and topped with macaroon style sponge. Ooh, there's 4 in there, and it says best before 22nd of July, but they're not going to last that long. They're not going to last until the end of today, I think. So that's all good. Looking forward to that. Just get a busy week today. I'm trying to get myself ahead of the game because I've got my final Jabby McJab face on Friday. Looking forward to that, but it's early in the morning. So I'm trying to make sure I can get a lot done. So if I do start to feel a little bit shit, therefore it won't affect, hopefully, the timing of Murder Mile. So today is Wednesday morning. Yeah. So that's all good. Slightly ahead of the game. But I've got to get into town for my eye appointment. I've got my next eye appointment, which is great. It's going very well. I'm glad for my eyes. I went private. I think I mentioned that last week, which was very good. I couldn't get in via the NHS because obviously, everything's in turmoil at the moment. And, the NHS are doing a fabulous job, but there's a lot of backlog because of, they can't get people in. So as mentioned, I went private. I thought it would be more expensive than it was. It's not. It was actually quite affordable. I was kind of shocked by that. They're not trying to palm me off with unnecessary stuff. I found them very professional, very good. And within the space of 5 weeks, I've gone from literally calling them up to having a consultation with the first consultant, and then all of my tests, and then the second consultation, which went very well. It's like 3 hours long. We went through all the lenses. We've ordered lenses. The lenses have turned up. I'm going in today to try them out. We've got a couple of weeks of just tweaking them to try and get everything right. But yeah, it's going really well. So that's 5 weeks from call to new lenses in. And the great thing is I've got a consultant for life. My old one retired, which is unfortunately lovely bloke, but he retired. He's my water's done. Not my water. It makes it sound like I'm having a baby. I'm not. My water's done. There we go. My water's broke. Stirry McStirface. There we go. Stirring of the tea. Yeah, my old consultant was brilliant, but he was close to retirement. And I knew he was going to retire. And then when it came to lockdown, because he works by himself, he was just like, it's too much. Having to clean down the surgery after every patient. He's just like, I'm doing it all by myself. He's receptionist and he's the eye specialist, and he's doing all the stuff. He's just like, it's too much. It's time to retire. So that's fair enough. Luckily, my new consultant, I think I'm probably about 10 years older than him, so that's good. So hopefully he'll be around for a good long while, and he's reassured me he will be around for a good long while, which is good. So we're going to do that. So that's going to be great. And later on, hopefully, I'm going to meet up with a mate of mine, have a couple of socially distant beers with my friend Mr. Marco Beard. So that'll be good. So that's my life. Not much else going on. It's weird, isn't it? When you get on the phone to people, I do this all the time. You probably do the same. And you go, so what else is going on? And everyone goes, not much really. We're kind of just plodding on, aren't we? We're kind of plodding through stuff. Murder Mile walks are still going on. I think we've done 3 now. They've been okay. They've been going all right. Tours until the end of the year, up until December the 12th. So don't forget, the reason why I'm keeping these tours open is kind of because people have got vouchers. So if you've got vouchers, you've got until the 12th of December to use them up. Everyone who has valid vouchers, I've already sent you an email with kind of different options on there that you can use. If your voucher expired during the pandemic and you haven't had a chance to use it, message me anyway, and I can kind of, if you want to use them up, I can still make them valid. That's not a problem at all. So I'll just change the dates and then you can book them in. But we've only got tours until the 12th of December. That's when they stop. So it gives everyone like 6 months, hopefully, and hopefully the virus will play ball and we can all do this nice and safely. I'm not putting too many people on the tours. It's maximum about 15 because I don't want it to become convoluted and busy and, a virus problem. So we're just going to play this safe. Okay. Oh, shit. Michael, you haven't put... Oh, okay, we're going to do the quiz questions, but the first quiz question, I haven't put the answer in, so I'm going to have to check that. Okay, let's do the quiz questions, as mentioned every week. Where's my coffee? As mentioned every week, some of these questions, I might edit this. I think this episode might be a bit longer than I need it to be. Oh, hot. So, I might edit some of the stuff out. So, let's see. Okay, strap in, folks. Question number 1. Who was the judge overseeing the trial at the Old Bailey? Question 2. Which magistrate's court was Daniel charged at? Question number 3. What street is Holborn Police Station on? I mean, technically it's on two different roads because it's on a corner. But which is it, as mentioned at the start of the programme, which one is it listed on? Question 4. What platform on Tottenham Court Road Tube was Daniel arrested on? Question 5. A scene from what film was shot there? Question 6. Which British serial killer was arrested 1 year before Daniel? Question 7. Before Broadmoor, Daniel was sent to which prison? Now, I've mentioned 2 prisons in this episode, so this is the one just before he got sent to Broadmoor, not the prison he was sent to ages ago, which was, let me just double check I haven't got it as a question. No, I haven't. So that was originally HMP Reading, which was when he was charged with burglary. This was, which one was he sent to just before Broadmoor? Question 8. What did Daniel use to slit his wrists? Question 9. What size were the 2 knives that Daniel had on him when he was arrested? And question 10. What is a 6-man unlock? We will answer those very shortly. Okay, let's dive into some extra stuff. To be honest, there's loads more I could have put into this episode. A lot of the information was taken from the inquest into Daniel's kind of treatment at the end. I've mentioned it throughout the episode, but a lot of the details were in there. A lot of the stuff that was in the press was just absolutely shambolic bullshit. Because as always, they just pick up on kind of the sensationalist stuff like the mask and the knives and Freddy Krueger, which is why what I've realised is that people's perceptions of who Daniel is twisted by what kind of crappy newspapers they get their information from, or I'm sorry to say, the crappy documentaries that are out there. There's one out there that is just dog shit. It's kind of, some of it has got the handheld stuff where it's, let's put in some creepy music, he's walking along the street, we put it in slow motion, yeah. And you know, it's meant to go, oh, look, isn't he an evil man? But you know, when you bother to sit down and do the research and you look into how his treatment over the years, yes, he's partially responsible for that, but a big part of that is, you know, the healthcare system that just, as they say in that, even in the report, they say they ran out of ideas, they didn't know what to do, and you know, it was a difficult diagnosis. Even like the doctors at Broadmoor, who are the specialists, you know, it took them almost a year of having him under full 24-hour observation for like 18 months. Trying out different medications before they could find a medication that was right for him, before they could really diagnose what he was about. And that's what he was crying out for. He was saying, I don't want to be an outpatient. I want to be an inpatient. I need to be in. I need someone to physically look at me every single day and monitor. You know, and you can't do that when you're being bounced between different departments and different doctors. So I've pulled out some pieces from the inquest that's on here. So I'll just read them straight. So this is from Dr. Petch, Edward Petch, who was the admitting psychiatric consultant at Broadmoor. He was the first psychiatrist that Daniel saw at Broadmoor, but was the one who did most of the kind of the talking at the Old Bailey trial as well, because he'd seen him for the longest period of time. Dr. Petch told the investigation. I pulled this out because this kind of explained Daniel's choice of victims. Dr. Petch told the investigation he would attack at random. He would take a chance. We asked him what it was about, and he hadn't really been able to tell us whether it was delusional misidentification or some sort of delusional psychotic thing going on. He just lashed out at whoever. There were a couple of incidents where there was some minor provocations in that sort of way, but he would just generally lash out. He was very impulsive and predictable. This is to do with the attacks kind of in Broadmoor as well. He was so unpredictable in terms of whether it was a particular time of day, a particular day of the month, day of the week. It was purely random. We tried to look at the pattern, whether there was any particular members of staff, black, white, male, female, but we couldn't identify any function of the staff, rank or anything. It just seemed to be those people who were nearby got it. So the more you nursed him, the more you were likely to be hit because you were with him longer. It was really very difficult. So that's kind of tells us a lot about the victims themselves, kind of the ones that he attacked and murdered, you know. Even though he said, you know, he was kind of planning. It took 2 days to plan. There is no planning on this. When you look at it, he's going in a random direction. We don't really know why he went to the places that he went to. He doesn't have any connection to them. He didn't have any connection to the victims. Do you know, he would say that he after Peter King, he tried to go for someone who was more vulnerable, which was Marie Harding, you know, an elderly lady vulnerable by herself. But then, you know, you look at him, he breaks into a house which has got people in it, and he attacks Kevin Malloy, you know, a guy who was described, you know, a gentle giant, so much bigger than Daniel, you know, much easier, but to kind of defend himself. But, you know, he had to attack him from behind. So it's weird. It's kind of. There's loads of opportunities where if Daniel wanted to attack, as mentioned in all the episodes, if he wanted to attack like big numbers of people and just get his kill count up and be arrested, because don't forget that's what he wants. He wants to be arrested so he can kind of enjoy the moment of being a serial killer or a spree killer, but he doesn't. So it's even with this, it's hard to pin down exactly why he picked the people that he did. I can hear meep sounds outside, and it's swans. We've got the swans, and there's loads of cygnets outside, and they're currently tapping on the boat, going, "Where's my breakfast?" Another bit that I pulled out was Dr. Petch also commented on the link between the homicides and Mr. Gonzales' suicidal state of mind during the offences. He said, I didn't pick up on whether there was an acute suicidality at the time of the offences. I presume that during the offences themselves he was very suicidal because he could quite easily have turned the knife on himself at that point. It didn't appear, it didn't happen, but it was only a hair's breadth. Sorry, these quotes are really awkward and throwing me off because someone has written it, someone has typed it up, but instead of using commas, where you need to use commas, they've used speech marks, and it's really annoying. I hate when people don't know how to use punctuation properly. He said he could have easily have ended up killing himself during the spree. He was called a serial killer in court, but he is more of a mass killer because it is like a spree killing. It is an all-in-one go in one episode. It was not one and then a couple of months later another one. If you look at the history of mass killings, a very large number of them end up killing themselves at the scene or very soon afterwards. We can all think of well-known examples, so I would say this is a job that has not yet been finished for him. He's got no idea why he did it. I am quite sure. I think the jury is still out on why he did it. Although ultimately they made their decision in the end that he was not mentally ill, that it was he was guided by drugs and his own kind of selfish needs and things like that. But then again, this is not to complain at the jury. The jury, juries can only do what they're given. I was foreman in the jury ages ago on an assault charge. The guy in front of us definitely did it. Nasty piece of shit. Definitely did it. It was split into two charges. We couldn't hear the first charge because that was a different case. Apparently his mate had been charged with that. He definitely did it. He came in front of us. He was a nasty piece of shit. You knew it. We weren't allowed to know his offences, but you could just tell. Nasty piece of shit. But we had to find him not guilty because there was no evidence. There was no CCTV. There was no corroborative witnesses. Basically, there was nothing. So, yeah. So, juries are only as good as the information put forward in front of them. So, yeah. Let's have a look. Oh, so the report came out. The failings in the system. There was a multi-professional review, and they identified a number of failings and problems. Oh dear, the sun's just come out behind me, and it's going to make me sneeze. There we go. Have a slurp of coffee while I'm doing this. They said that the problems were lost opportunities to undertake full assessments, which is true quite often. There were opportunities where kind of Daniel came forward and they could have sat down and given him a full assessment, but they didn't. As mentioned in one of the first episodes, Daniel turned up expecting a psychiatric assessment, and what he got was a social worker just giving him a bit of a once-over. He could have gone into hospital as an inpatient and been fully assessed, which he was when he was sectioned, but quite often when he was an outpatient, he wasn't fully assessed. He was just basically briefly looked at, which is when we got that doctor saying, yep, he's fine, everything's okay. Another recommendation said the use of several sets of case notes, as mentioned, so many different doctors, so many different notes, it's hard to corroborate them together. The difficulties in recruitment and retention of staff. The difficulties in recruitment and retention of staff in Patch 3 and the reduced attendance of the consultant psychiatric at Patch 3 meetings. These were the crisis meetings. So obviously, you have different people at different meetings, and kind of again, as everyone's saying, there's no consistency there. It's all very well having people having a nice big meeting, but if it's not the same people meeting at different times, you're not going to get consistency. The lack of engagement with Mr. Gonzales from specialist services, and the fact their work was carried out in isolation from other services, again the same. The failure to formally involve his mother and to support her. No shit. I mean, that really is what especially episode 1 is all about. The absence of a formal handover from the community, child and adolescent services to adult services. Good point. He does actually go from when he hits 18, that's when everything goes a little bit weird. A lot of people do say that, especially I got mates who work in services that kind of help children, and they kind of just say by the time a child gets to 16 or 18, they have all the help that they need, and then all of a sudden it just stops. And there's no crossover point. You've got to really push to get to the second, to be treated by adult services after you've been through children's services. Let's have a little bit of a look at the arrest. This is a kind of an interesting thing. This is why I opened with this in part 1, but I really wanted us to come back to this at the end. It's not very dramatic, but that's the whole point. It's kind of, it makes you ask the question: if he is a serial killer / spree killer, he's got knives in his pocket, he wants to kill as many people as possible. He's talking about killing as many old Bill, i.e. policemen, as possible. He's in town, he's got knives on him, he's going into a tube. He could do a mass killing right there, but he doesn't. So why does he do all these things he does? He goes into Tottenham Court Road, he buys a travel card with a £20 note. The £20 note is stained with blood, which would later be found to be Derek and Jean's blood. Why does he use that? Why does he not go to the ticket machine? Instead, he goes to a kind of a person in a booth who looks at the note. If you put it in the ticket machine, the machine won't see it. So why did he go there? We don't know. Why is he buying a travel card to get him around London? That doesn't get him home. He's heading away from King's Cross, which means he's not going back to collect his bag. He might be going in the direction of Waterloo, which could get him home. But if he was going home, why didn't he buy a ticket back to Woking from there, which you can do? Again, the platform. Which platform? I haven't mentioned deliberately. I'm getting good at this now. I'm remembering my questions. This is kind of weird as well. He goes down to the platform. He's got the knives on him. The transport police are coming near him. They don't really know a lot about him at this point. They don't know that he's a serial killer. All they know is that there's a guy down there. He handed over a note which had blood on it. He looks like the guy. Whether we know at this point, we're not too sure at this point whether he was confirmed as being the person that they were looking for in North London. It may not have happened at that point. Don't forget, this is that morning. Things don't happen that fast. They may have found out afterwards. But all they know at that point is the guy's a little bit bloodied. 2 uniformed officers go down there. Train approaches. Daniel goes to go on the train. The 2 British transport police officers get him and go, can we have a word with you? He goes, yep. What's the problem? And they handcuff him on the station platform there, and he is escorted back up to the concourse. There's no fight. Even though he said, I'm going to kill as many old Bill as possible, he doesn't. He doesn't do any of that. So what was going on in his head? I mean, we know sometimes he can be a bit of a coward, as we've seen. When he attacks from behind, he can stab and stab and stab. He likes to believe that he's a massive serial killer. But as we've seen, when he is confronted, i.e. with Peter King, or with Kumas and his wife, when, they attacked him with a baby cradle and a set of slippers. He had the knife on him. He could have attacked back, but he didn't. He ran. So there is a sense of cowardice there. So it's odd. It's odd. His arrest is just baffling. He could have gone on for a major, massive killing there, but he didn't. And I think this is indicative of everything that's in there. Even though he said it was planned, none of this is planned. It's all it's random. It's all over the shop. If he really was wanting to be a serial killer, he would have planned it, because you need to have that month's break in between in order to show that you are a serial killer. But what he was focused on was just being a killer, killing as many as possible. So, he is a spree killer, or, as Dr. Pesh said, nearer to being a mass killer, because the likelihood, because of the amount of killings all in the same period of time, and the likelihood is that he's probably going to kill himself. That's a good point, actually, that Dr. Pesh made, that especially with a lot of mass killers, that they do commit suicide afterwards, and Daniel very much was on the suicidal spectrum. You can kind of see that with his psychotic episode a couple of days before, when he was running around town, jumping off the bins, trying to smash his own nose, things like that. Knives all around the kitchen. Why were they there? Was he thinking about death, thinking about killing other people, or was he thinking about killing himself? It's an odd one, isn't it? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, so I didn't put this in the episode because, as always, sometimes it feels like the episode's going on too long. And I always think half an hour is about the right amount of time for an episode. And sometimes, if it goes on too long, you just think, just extraneous information. Hence, Extra Mile. So, on Wednesday the 5th and Thursday the 6th of July 2006, Daniel's... there was an appeal of Daniel's sentence at the Court of Appeals. So, Lord Justice Latham, Lord Justice Irwin, and Sir Richard Curtis, not the one who wrote Notting Hill, sitting at London's Criminal Appeal Court, they heard that Daniel should be given the charge of should be given a chance to have parole, because by this point he's been put under. It was a 30-year tariff, but then it had been upgraded to a whole life tariff. Let's go. Yeah, what they were saying is, what they wanted is, even though yes he should go to prison for what he's done, and yes he should be sent to Broadmoor, that he should be given a glimmer of hope, because given the fact that Daniel has a long history of mental health problems, he's relatively young. Do you know, he's only 24 years old. He's been in and out of kind of the mental health system for years, and he suffers with depression and things like that. You have to give him a sense of hope. Do you know, you can't just lock him away and say, fuck you, you're never coming back. You've got to give him a kind of a sense of hope there. Unfortunately, the appeal was denied, so I'll read what the judge said. Sorry, I got burpees again. Coffee burpees, lovely. They're always the best, aren't they? Lord Justice Latham disagreed that there should be that he should be given the right to have parole, and refused permission against appeal against the sentence, saying, "It is in our judgment abundantly apparent that these offences were premeditated because of the repeated acquisition of knives before each attack. He showed no remorse for the killings, laughing when he described Dr. Robinson's killing to medical staff at Broadmoor where he was detained. This shows his conduct was driven by a perverse enjoyment of the power to kill people and his sadistic pleasures. The appellant derived, i.e. Daniel, derived pleasure from his actions in the cruel killing of people. He is highly unpredictable, and he is likely to attack people or cause harm to others in the future. There was ample material before the sentencing judge to support the imposition of a whole life sentence. Consequently, the application is refused." So basically, the appeals judge just basically felt the same as the jury, that, you know, he was just a twisted young boy who was obsessed with killing, and doesn't really see him as mentally unwell, even though everyone is sending him back to Broadmoor Psychiatric Prison. So everyone's saying he's not mentally unwell, and yet they're saying, oh, but he is, you know, he is unwell, so we will send him to prison, but we won't give him a right to have a chance at an appeal. So let's just see. As mentioned, Daniel, when he was at Broadmoor, he'd been moved through a series of wards. There was the Luton ward, which was the admissions ward, then the kind of the ISIS ward, which is the kind of the more high dependency ward, and then he was moved to the Henley ward. But about 17 days before his death, he was moved to the Windsor ward, which was kind of middle of July 2007. That was a young person's lower risk ward. He was still hearing voices, but, you know, everyone said he was seeming quite calm. He wasn't harming himself anymore. He seemed to be doing a lot better. At this lower risk ward, the kind of young person's ward, he was interacting with people. He was listening to music. He'd become quite placid, not kind of docile as in drugged up, but, you know, people could have conversations with him. You know, he seemed to be doing a lot better when he was there, which is, but even though he was still on a 30-minute watch, because he was a suicide risk. So, you know, they were pretty much doing everything that they could do. You know, don't forget they have a lot of people there. You can't. They'd had him on 18-month, 24-hour, 2-person arm's length watch for 18 months. So, you know, and that must have a detrimental effect on his mental well-being as well, because you think about it, he can't shower by himself, he can't poo by himself, he can't sleep by himself. Someone's always next to him. So, you know, as he starts to improve, as they're giving him better medication, as he starts to calm, they're kind of giving him his little bit of freedom back. Don't forget, he doesn't have freedom because he can't go home. He's not going to be released from prison because of the judges. So basically, they're trying to give him as much freedom as they can without, you know, hurting him. So he's on 30-minute watch by that point, which is still a lot. He's been checked every 30 minutes every day. Dr. Petch would say, I think we felt that given his history, at that moment he was generally trying to kill himself. He felt his was a job not complete. He had allegedly killed 4 people and had tried to kill 6, and we felt there was still one more left, and that was himself. And he would not stop until he succeeded. Let's go down. So, as mentioned, morning of the 9th of August, nurses became concerned because he hadn't collected his medication. A nurse had already gone past, just before. The nurse was Natsia Gazambwe. I didn't put that in the episode because I knew I'd trip over that name. Had a look through the window, saw him just before 8 o'clock. He seemed to be fine. He was kind of half naked, lying on his bed. Seemed to be okay. But the patients were about to be woken up about 8 o'clock, which is why they were doing their kind of rounds at that point. Between 8:20 and 8:30, nurses became kind of concerned that he hadn't come to collect his medication. That was part of the routine, that doors open, everyone comes and collects their medication. And when they went in, he had killed himself. They had said he had been dead for roughly half an hour. So it looks like by the time the nurse had kind of gone past and looked at him, he was fine. After that, he had killed himself. But, doors shut, no one heard anything. He didn't make any sounds. He died shortly afterwards, bled to death. There was a 2-day inquest into the death of Daniel Gonzales, as has to happen. If someone dies in custody, there has to be an inquest into that. 2-day inquest into the death was opened at the Guildhall in Windsor, led by the coroner Peter Bedford. The inquest heard evidence from staff nurses Roger Coles, who was a nurse at Broadmoor for 33 years and was so shocked by the scene that he has not worked there since. They also had in the nurse who found him that morning. I think that's it. No, we've already used that quote in there. As I say, everyone repeatedly says, even though at the trial, people going, we don't think he's mentally ill, we think he's fine, because they're seeing one side. On the other side, what you've got is mental health professionals at Broadmoor, not just any old crappy hospital where they have to have a bit of a psychiatric unit in there just because, if for whatever reason. These are specialists in what they do. This is their job. They do it 24 hours a day. They're not like a GP who's does piles for one patient and then a verruca and then maybe some mental health. This is a specialist. These specialists who do it, and multiple specialists at Broadmoor are saying Danny is one of the most disturbed, sick young men that we've ever treated at Broadmoor. So it's kind of odd, isn't it? Which is kind of sad for him and his family as well. I'll do a little bit on the independent investigation afterwards. Lucy Scott Moncrief, who wrote the report, said at the time, this was a case where things went wrong early on and did not recover. Overall, Mr. Gonzales was not treated successfully. We cannot say with any certainty that they could have been, but we can and do say that the way he was treated was not likely to succeed and did not succeed. Gonzales had nearly 60 appointments with doctors and psychiatrists over 7 years, and in a desperate appeal, his mother wrote to her MP asking whether her son had to kill someone before he was given the proper treatment. She also wrote to the chairwoman of NHS Southwest. I think that's it. In the 2009 inquiry, they said we are satisfied that Mr. Gonzales suffered with schizophrenia. Well, there you go. Even though at the trial it was found, they said he didn't suffer from schizophrenia, but the inquest said, oh yes, he did. As with obviously a lot of the mental health organisations, NHS denied responsibility for this. They said there was no direct link between his illness and the shocking attacks. Sorry, there's loads of, but his mother Leslie saw it differently. The problem was not inadequate law or a lack of diagnosis, but inadequate care. She compiled a 76-page complaint to the NHS, stating this is not that the present Mental Health Act has failed, but that many professionals failed to implement it. We met individual, decent, caring professionals, but even they could not sustain support. They, like us and Daniel, were failed by a system that is underfunded and incapable of providing joined-up care. I think I put bits of that throughout the series. I think that's it. Yeah, that'll do that. I think pretty much everything is in the episode. I've put in a lot into this episode, so hope you enjoy. Oh, right, hang on. I'm going to do the answers to the questions, but I'm going to have to go back and double check something because I didn't put it in the episode. Oh, what was her bloody name? There she is. Okay. Glad it's in the episode. Right, let's do answers to the questions. Question number 1. Who was the judge overseeing the trial? It was Judge Anne Goddard, QC. Just had to check that. Which magistrate's court... Oh, question number 2. Which magistrate's court was Daniel charged at? It was Highbury Magistrates Court. Question number 3. What street is Holborn Police Station on? Oh, I'm going to stretch. It's on Lamb's Conduit Street. It's on the corner of Theobald's Road, but if you look at the address, it's actually Lamb's Conduit Street because that's where the entrance is. Ooh, burpees. Question 4. What platform on Tottenham Court Road Tube was Daniel arrested on? It was platform 4 on the southbound Northern Line. On Patreon, I've done a little video on there. I was going into town early to do one of the tours. I was on the tube anyway because I had to. I was all masked up, and then I thought, oh, great, while I'm here, I'll just do a quick video, and then I'll bugger off before people turn up and start breathing everywhere. Ugh. Question 5. A scene from what film was shot on platform 4? It was An American Werewolf in London. Whether that was something that was in Daniel's head, whether we knew that, we don't know. It just seems kind of weird that of all the places in London that he picked the place where a scene from the American Werewolf in London was shot. Do you know, he likes horror movies. It just seems odd. If he would have been at Notting Hill outside Richard Curtis's Blue Door, I wouldn't have put this in the episode because it would be irrelevant. But it just seems weird that platform, that line, that station just seems weird. American Werewolf, of course, was also shot in various other places around London, including Piccadilly Circus, and it has one of the best scenes in there when David Kessler goes to watch a porno, and there's a watch. It's very good. There's a fake porno that's in there with Brenda Bristol's, and it's very funny. It's very funny. Best worst dialogue ever. I might try and sneak it into the episode. I'm not too sure. Question 6. Which British serial killer was arrested 1 year before Daniel? That was Anthony Hardy, the Camden Ripper. And there's a lot of similarities between Anthony Hardy and Daniel Gonzales. If you think about the first case with Anthony Hardy had he'd murdered his first victim, but throughout, if you go back to the episodes about the 4 faces of the Camden Ripper, you can see how he's manipulating the system. And there was a kind of a lot of talk about whether Daniel Gonzales had read up a lot on Anthony Hardy and about how Anthony Hardy had manipulated the system to make mental health professionals believe that he wasn't a psychotic, that he was just an alcoholic. That taking him off alcohol would solve it. So if you think about it, with the first case when he murdered that young lady, he went into a psychiatric unit, and a couple of months later he was released. Even though he'd committed murder, he'd been released because obviously, the pathologist had said it wasn't a murder. But also Anthony Hardy was gone, I'm not psychotic, I'm just an alcoholic. If I stay off the booze, I'll be fine. Question 7. Before Broadmoor, Daniel was sent to which prison? That is HMP Belmarsh. Lots of terrorists there. Oh, lovely. Question 8. What did Daniel use to slit his wrists? It was a broken CD case. Question 9. What size were the 2 knives that Daniel had on him when he was arrested? It was an 8-inch and a 12-inch knife. And question 10. What is a 6-man unlock? It is 6 prison officers, sometimes in riot gear, needed to enter a violent prisoner's cell. Whew, so that's that. That's that done. Whew, lots to edit. And then I'm going to get into town and do all my stuff and pick up a mate's birthday present, which I made ages ago, but it's only just turned up because I had to get someone else to make the rest of it for me. Very annoying. Going to meet Marco, going to visit my eye specialist, get my new lenses, and hopefully be back home later on, so that'll be good. So that's that episode done. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to wrap up now. Now it's going to go really weird for me because I've spent good couple of hours just talking into this microphone, talking, and now it's about to stop, and I'm going to have silence in this boat for a long time. It's a weird feeling when the episode stops. But anyway, that's that. Hope you enjoyed that. Have yourself a good week. Stay safe. Be good. Lots of love. Bye.